So do you ever feel guilty for not meeting the recommended 8 glasses of water a day? I know I used to, at least until I learned what I'm going to be sharing with you now. The interesting thing is that this has never actually been based on any real science. In fact, it was based on something that was stated over 80 years ago and has been twisted and misunderstood ever since. In fact, following it might actually be doing you more harm than good, because what your body needs more than 8 glasses of water is hydration. And hydration is not drinking water. It's much more than that. So before you chug down another glass of water, I'm going to unpack this myth, and I'm going to share with you what actually works to hydrate the body and what actually supports your health, your energy, your vitality when it comes to water and hydration. So let's start with the origins of this myth. So this goes all the way back to 1945, yeah, that long ago. So back then, the US Food and Nutrition Board of National Academy of Sciences stated, and I'm going to read this from my iPad, so excuse me a second. Specifically, what they stated was: a suitable allowance of water for adults is 2.5 liters daily in most instances. An ordinary standard for diverse persons is 1 milliliter for each calorie of food. Most of this quantity is contained in prepared foods. So I realise they didn't speak with an English accent, but the last part of that statement is heavily ignored. When people talk about 8 glasses of water, they forget to mention that recommendation also includes the water that's found in our food. But that's not really where I'm coming from, but that is an important consideration. So there's many reasons why this rule is pretty flawed. So let's start with the first one, and that is that water actually comes from multiple sources, not just water that we get from the tap or the bottles. It comes first of all from food, like is stated in there. In fact, anything up to around 30% of the water that we intake comes from food. Sometimes less than that, depending if you're eating a whole food diet or a very processed diet. Processed diets are usually very dehydrating or have very dehydrated foods, whereas fresh whole foods is full of water. Depending on what we're eating, our needs for water external through beverages, through drinking, is going to vary depending on what we're actually eating. The second thing is mitochondria, those tiny little organelles in our cells that produce all our energy. They also produce water, believe it or not. That's a byproduct of the energetic processes that produce ATP. So the more mitochondria we have and the better those mitochondria are functioning, the more hydrated we are. This is also another factor, depending on how healthy you are metabolically, mitochondrially speaking, will dictate how much water you need. And then of course, there's other beverages, but not just water that hydrate us. Most beverages contain some level of water, some contain diuretics like caffeine, and some are obviously full of lots of other potentially health harmful substances, but they do contribute in some level. So it's not just water that hydrates. So all of those things are going to influence how much water you actually need. And then another factor that really influences our hydration is our intake of minerals, specifically electrolytes. So things like calcium, magnesium, sodium, chloride, potassium, all of these are electrolytes. And these are very important for holding water in the body, particularly in the cells. So if we're deficient in minerals, and many people are, particularly those minerals and other electrolyte-based minerals that we may be consuming, then we're going to be dehydrated. No matter how much water, I don't care whether you drink 4 liters, 10 liters, 2 liters, whatever, you're not going to be hydrated. So you've got to get the minerals, particularly the electrolytes, into the body for hydration. And it's not just about our intake of minerals, but there's many things that influence that. If our digestion is compromised, we're not absorbing minerals properly. Obviously, if our diet's deficient in minerals and mineral-rich foods, then we're going to be dehydrated. Also, if our body's very toxic, some toxins, particularly things like heavy metals, actually displace minerals from the body. So again, It's much more than just mineral intake as well. But all of these things are going to influence our hydration status. And then of course there's lots of things that actually influence how much water we need. That's our body size, how much muscle we have, because muscle contains a lot of water, and muscle needs a lot of water to function as well. These also influence it. Of course our diets, like I've just mentioned, in terms of are we eating processed foods, whole foods, but also are we consuming a lot of protein? That can also influence how much water we need, because excess protein or excess salt in the diet can also deplete water, because water is used to flush it out of the system through the urine as it's filtered through the kidneys. So there's other things as well to take into account here. And also things like stress, inflammation, they also influence how water is utilized in the body and our hydration status as well. So to have these general unpersonalized rules really isn't helpful. And also there's this idea that we should drink lots and lots of water, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't drink water, and certainly everyone's needs is going to be different, but excessive amounts of water can also be quite harmful. Sometimes people do it because they think that if we drink lots of water, we're helping to detoxify the body, and yes, that can play a factor, but there's so many variables involved that's going to influence our body's ability to detoxify. This is something that's happening through all our organs, not all our organs, but livers, kidney, colon, skin, lungs. All of these things detoxify, and if they're not working properly, it doesn't matter how much water we're drinking. So let's not be in the illusion either that if we drink lots and lots of water, we're detoxifying. Yes, that's an important element, but you need to get all the other things right, minerals, etc. as well. So given that there's lots of different variables that are going to influence what our personal water needs are, how can we actually tell if we're getting enough, if we're not following this kind of basic guideline that's way oversimplified? Very simple. You've got to pay attention to the body. How do you feel? How thirsty are you? How's your mouth? But one of the biggest things is actually paying attention to the color of your urine. If your urine is very dark or yellow, then that's a sure sign you're dehydrated. If your urine is very pale yellow, that's a good indication that you're hydrated. If it's clear, you're overhydrated, and that in itself can cause problems. Over irrigated, I should say. To be hydrated, you can't really be overhydrated, but you can be over irrigated, i.e. you're drinking too much water. So the bottom line here is you've got to think about hydration in a holistic sense. It's your diet, yes, it's water, yes, but it's also minerals, it's also all your individual makeup, it's also your digestion, it's your toxicity in your body. All of those things are going to influence how much water you need. So the key message is don't get caught up in all this health dogma. Just pay attention to your body, listen to your body, to understand the key indications to pay attention to, and you'll have a much better idea about how much water you should be drinking. So before I wrap up this video, I want to let you know about a free guide that I've just created on the top 7 ways to double your energy. So these are 7 of the best science-backed ways that I've learned to increase your energy levels, your vitality, your focus. They don't need lots and lots of time to implement. It's not about radically transforming your lifestyle here. It's about making some small changes, making just smarter choices for the most part, in order to increase your energy levels significantly. So if that's of interest, just comment below this video energy, and I'll send you the details of how to get a copy of this guide. So on that note, I'm off to grab myself a glass of water, just not 8 glasses, and I'll catch you again soon.